The Probatus of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi. The late afternoon sun lulled Mohandas into peaceful meditation, the pangs of hunger from fasting easily controlled. His thoughts drifted to Kasturba, his wife and source of permanence and strength. They had weathered many of life's challenges together, from Africa to India, through periods of self-doubt and imprisonment. She was constantly by his side. She even gave him 4 sons, the youngest of which, Devdas, was following fast in his footsteps. They were to meet this afternoon at the rally against British textiles in India. Slowly he got to his feet and smoothed his dhoti with an extra feeling of pride. The British fabrics were more colorful and of finer quality, but they were not Indian. As leader of the Indian Congress, he was fervent to bring about Swaraj, or complete individual, spiritual, and political independence for his people. It was vital that he lead by example, embodying his message of non-cooperation, non-violence, and peaceful protest against the British Raj. And that all started with looking the part in his simple white woven dhoti. Mohandas moved slowly and deliberately from his solitude on the balcony to the loud and harried commotion in the common area of the Congressional Building. Immediately he was rushed from all sides by colleagues as he made his way to the front of the building. Not everyone was convinced that the hard stance against Britain was a good idea, considering the building tensions with Germany in the north. Methodically, he walked through the flurry of activity to the front doors to greet the demonstrators. The bright light of the setting sun washed over him as the roar of the crowd renewed his energy. A political opponent was trying, and failing, to speak to the crowd over the loudspeakers. With each attempt, the crowd would roar louder, cutting him off. Slowly, Mohandas moved to the microphone and smiled at him. With a huff of frustration, the man walked away, and the crowd exploded at the meaningless victory. "Your generous adulation fills me with purpose and resolve. Together, we will overcome the oppression of the foreign occupiers. Our days of supporting a foreign royalty are coming to an end. What is man, if he is not a thief who openly charges as much as he can for the goods he sells? Stand with me today as we peacefully protest the financial oppression imposed upon us." The crowd roared in appreciation and support. "Father, over here!" yelled an exuberant voice from the front of the police barricade. Mohandas smiled and walked past the armed guards to join his son. "And look who decided to join us." Standing beside his son, Devdas, was his grandson, Raj Mohan. The boy was no more than 10 years of age, and glowed with pride for his father and grandfather. Mohandas patted the boy on the head and joined in with the cheers of the crowd. The crowd of thousands pressed on for hours, and the setting sun began to offer some relief for the day's heat. A disturbance nearby caught the attention of Mohandas as the tension and shouts began to intensify. He pushed through the panicking crowds to see a group of intoxicated British Indian officers. "Fight back, you dirty cow-kissers! Give me a reason to fill you with lead!" the lead officer yelled at the fallen Indian protester. "Do not fight back," Mohandas yelled. "They intend on drawing us into violence. It is beneath us." The crowd stood tall at the renewed presence of their leader among them. Drunk in anger, pushed the officer towards the very popular leader, a crazy look in his eyes. His size dwarfed Mohandas. "Perhaps you would like to demonstrate your non-violence for us, buttonhead." Without warning, he swung the butt of his rifle low and into the gut of Mohandas. Instantly, the aging man hit the ground, doubled over in pain. The hot, searing pain locked his muscles, and he clenched his bruised stomach. Several people started to move forward, and Mohandas thrust a hand out with a flat palm directing them to stop. With intense effort, he forced himself to his feet and balanced unsteadily against his son. As hard as he tried, he could not fully stand upright. "Fracture every bone in my body if you must, but my spirit will remain strong," he thought to himself. The crowd had grown quiet as the sneer of the drunken officer turned to a rage. "I must not falter. My people need a leader with strong resolve. They are counting on me." A smirk returned to the officer as he towered over the hunched leader, his rifle slung casually over his shoulder. His club-like fist swung wide toward Mohandas, who closed his eyes, bracing for the impact, strength building in his spirit. A smack of flesh and a grunt of pain punctuated the air as Mohandas stood unfazed. To his bewilderment, the officer punched the man beside him. His son, Devdas, now laid crumpled on the ground. A trickle of blood appeared on his cheek where his fist connected. A piece of Mohandas's resolve slipped. "Devdas, are you all right?" he said, crouching to his son. Several others also jumped to help. Devdas nodded his head and slowly got to his feet. Mohandas looked from his son to the surrounding crowd. Fear plainly bore on their faces, trepidation revealed in their eyes. Someone needed to step in and control the crowd, assuage their panic. "It is up to me," thought Mohandas. "First, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. Then you win," Mohandas said loudly. The effect was instantaneous as the crowd stood taller. The people had been so accustomed to being powerless that they were reluctant to even stand for themselves, let alone another. In the last few moments of daylight, the sun gave them the strength to stand together, to stand tall. For a moment, the officer looked as though he was about to retreat, reconsider his actions. He spoke quietly to one of his comrades and turned, walking back to Mohandas and Devdas. Both men stood tall, awaiting the next blow. While their attention was fixed on the brute in front of them, a shrill scream made the entire crowd flinch. The other officer had pulled a boy into the circle of onlookers and pinned him to the ground, pressing the barrel of his rifle to his head. Raj Mohan, Mohandas's grandson, lay desperately before them. Without thinking, Devdas lunged forward to his son and met the club-like fist a second time, this time rendering him unconscious. The voices in his head waged a war, one side screaming for retaliation, the other demanding resolve before the crowd that depended on him. "Leave the boy," Mohandas shouted, "and take me if you are to make an example of someone." Mohandas saw the butt of the gun coming, but couldn't move to avoid it, the deep thud reinforcing the prior bruise and completely debilitating him. Through tear-filled eyes, he watched the panic in his grandson's eyes as the soldier began counting down. "You have 5 seconds to stop me," he shouted. The smirk, now a full-on maniacal laughter. 5, 4, 3. Mohandas felt the force of his inner strength build, his courage fortifying him, his will focused. He closed his eyes and bowed his head. "God, let him be saved. Help me now." 2, 1. A gunshot punctuated the air. All was still. With trepidation, Mohandas opened his eyes. The crowd of onlookers, as well as the soldiers, stood motionless, staring at him. The boy leaned up on his elbow with a tear running down his face. "Mohandas Karamchand Ghandi, you have failed your Probatus. You will now begin again." In that moment, a lifetime of memories returned to Mohandas, and he became aware. Darkness quickly descended upon him, and the dry heat of the evening air was replaced by a warmth and wetness. He found it difficult to move and pushed in all directions to no avail. The only sound was a deep pounding like a resounding bass drum. The rhythmic beat and the gentle sway lulled him to slumber as all his memories faded and he slept.